Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Know-How is brought to you by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This episode of Know-How is brought to you by Braintree. If you're working on a mobile app and searching for the right payments API, check out the Braintree V.0 SDK. With one simple integration, you get every way to pay. To learn more and to try out the sandbox, go to braintreepayments.com/knowhow. And by iFixit. You can fix it, and iFixit makes it easy with free step-by-step repair guides, high-quality replacement parts, and all the tools you'll ever need. For $10 off your purchase of $50 or more, go to ifixit.com/twit and enter the code KNOWHOW at checkout.
Tonight, silence an airplane with a hedge.
Brian plays with a Game Boy.
Maker Faire VTOL.
And why won't it melt? Backward. Welcome to Know-How. It's the Twitch show where we build, bend, break, and upgrade. I'm Father Robert Balliser.
And I'm Brian Burnett.
And Know-How is the show where we give you a couple of the projects that we've been working on so that you can take them home and geek out on your own.
Some of the cool things that we've heard about over the weekend or projects that have come up. So
and we've got a good show. Actually, you're playing with the Game Boy. You're going to show us another Game Boy mod.
Yes, this will be probably my final Game Boy mod before we move into Raspberry Pi.
Ooh, and I think you've got some Xbox action coming up soon, yeah?
Yes, because there is the whole problem, won't get into it too much, but the 360, Red Ring of Death, and iFixit has a fix for it, and this poor 360 has just been collecting dust, and I can't let it do that anymore.
Exactly. Now, we're also going to be going back to Maker Faire, because we've got a lot of really good content that we want to break out to the folks, and I think it's time for some feedback. We haven't done feedback for a week. Let's answer some questions.
From our Google Plus group, 8,500 strong.
And we've also got a little special treat at the end. Make sure you stay all the way to the end of the episode. But before we do that, Brian, there's a little something that I've worried about because I've lived under airports before. It's not
a pleasant experience, right? A lot of noise.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, especially if you're in the right kind of environment, noise from an airport can travel miles and miles and miles, and it doesn't decrease in sound all that much. You get this very interesting bounce of audio.
It kind of like oscillates around.
It oscillates, and it's the worst kind because it's not just that droning noise. It's the droning noise that suddenly gets louder and then soft, and then louder and then soft.
Well, I mean, you can deal with droning noise. You fly quads all the time.
I do all the time, but not next to my head.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, specifically, imagine this. Imagine that you live in a beautiful city. It's out in the country. Now, because of the geographical features of the area, it's perfect for an airport. It's got long, flat swaths of land. There's no mountains nearby, so it's a great place to put an international airport. And that's what has happened. You have one of the busiest airports in your country. In fact, one of the busiest airports in the world. Sounds great, except
if you live there.
Except if you live there. They have this airport in, where is this? Schiphol. Schiphol.
And that is where?
I don't know.
Somewhere in the world.
Somewhere in the world. But the terrain is such that they were getting 80 decibels, which is that's loud. That's like being inside the airplane from 18 miles away from the airport.
Wow, that is traveling really far.
It's horrible, horrible, horrible. And so they tried a lot of abatement
like putting up walls and stuff like that?
You put up walls.
Like the kind you see along the freeways and stuff like that?
Exactly, and it actually made it worse. Because the way that this sort of valley, it was a huge valley, but you would get the audio waves would bounce off the walls and back off the mountains and then back into the village. It was a nightmare, right?
Yeah, okay.
So what they did was they had some researchers come down and they said, we want a noise abatement project. What can we do? And they were willing to pay a considerable sum of money. And they thought, bigger walls? Do we restrict air travel coming through here? Although that's tough because it's a massive airport.
Right.
And what they found out was that they could reduce significantly the amount of noise that actually made it to the small town, not by building walls, but by changing landscape.
Okay, so like topiary and stuff like that, or
well, yeah. So this is what it looks like. See these little diamond slots? So the slots here.
Yeah.
There was an 80-acre park between the airport and the city, and the sound was just getting funneled over this area. So what they did was they cut grooves into the ground and they grew a bunch of hedges, because their acoustic model told them that that would split up the sound just enough to make a difference. When they did this, they actually cut the noise by more than half.
That's awesome.
And no wall, no expensive project,
Yeah.
just basically dig a ditch.
So I'm guessing that the main problem before was that it was just acting as a flat surface and it was just, you know, bouncing the noise around and stuff.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, so this is what it looked like. So you had, the way that noise kind of works when you have audio waves is they'll bounce anytime they hit a different medium, a different density. And so you would have this effect. They would basically bounce more forward, and then they'd hit the town and you'd get this confluence of just noise.
Right.
When you added these little barriers inside of the landscape, not big ones, not expensive ones,
Yeah.
but you just deflected enough of the energy into different directions that what finally made it to the town was up to 1/3 of what it used to be.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at this little graphic here, it instantly reminds me of those little foam pieces that you bought for inside the studio.
Exactly. And this is actually, this is the same principle that works on stealth fighters, stealth aircraft.
Oh, because they deflect the radar waves? Or
Right, so
something like
you use faceted surfaces rather than curved surfaces, because curved surfaces could bounce everything back to the source, which would be the radar dish, whereas if you have like a multifaceted design, think of the F-117, you'd have waves that bounce off into nothingness.
that? Right.
Yeah, and this is what the finished product looks like. It's really, really cool, but I'd love to see this actually at play around here. As you said, here in California, if you drive up and down our freeways here, at least in Northern California,
Right.
we have these huge barrier walls.
Yeah.
And I remember when they first went up, when I was a kid, people were complaining. They're like, it's actually made it worse.
Yeah, because then it's just bouncing it straight off the wall into the other direction.
Right, so what happened is you put the wall up, and so you have now a wall between the freeway and your house. Now, you're not getting straight noise from the cars, but you're getting the bounce off the other wall.
Yeah.
And it would get,
It's like
it would actually get
amplifying
worse.
it.
And that was expensive. It was like $1 million a mile to cover the 680 in those.
Well, one of the biggest complaints recently has been they're trying to put the train in from up here, and they've only managed to get to like Larkspur because Marin doesn't want a train going through Marin, which is a Marin thing. But I wonder if they're, you know, maybe we could build something like that along the way to kind of reduce the noise of the train and people would be okay with it.
And you can do it in such a way that it doesn't put a really expensive and let's face it, really ugly wall in the way, but it just, you play with the landscape.
That's a smart way to do it. It's green. Yeah.
I'd love to see more of this, a green noise abatement. Let's see if it catches on. I mean, you do need to set aside parts of the land for it, so it's not going to work obviously in a high density city.
Yeah,
but
it seems like the airport kind of lucked out that they had 80 acres right next to it.
So there you go. The next time you complain about noise from the local airport, maybe you just need to put a big park between you.
And we could use one of those at the editing desks.
Yeah, we definitely could.
So much noise.
Now, Brian, you've been teasing me with this for a while. You've been doing some GameBoy mods. I've been watching you down in the no-hole. You've been very diligently learning up on your soldering skills.
Yeah.
You've got a new one for me. So you've already shown me how to fix a Game Boy. You've
Fix
shown
your
me
old Game Boy,
how to put a backlight on a Game Boy.
Which is a huge difference.
Huge difference.
Yeah.
But there's something else that you can do, and I can't remember where you found this out.
So this was like, this is the next step. This is the final step when it comes to working with this gadget. It's a little chip that you attach to the board, and the nice thing, we talked about this before, is that this board is so old that it's not too difficult to actually solder parts to it. This was kind of tough. Like, this is, I would say, a little bit more advanced than some of the other soldering projects we've had. But yeah, what it does is it flips the, it's called a bivert chip. So it flips the,
like the contrast.
the contrast, right. And so when you do that, it actually gives you more contrast when you flip the polarization filament on it.
All right. Now, flipping contrast sounds interesting, but I want to actually see it in action.
All right. Alex, our director, why don't you hit that magical button? So this is the final step in modding our original Game Boy. On the left I have the original unmodified Game Boy. The Game Boy in the middle has just the LCD with the backlit screen. And then on the right is the LCD with the backlight and the HEX Mod. Now what is the HEX chip and what does it do? Well, it's magic. No, actually the simple explanation is that it is a bivert chip which inverts the contrast of the screen, and by doing that and reversing the polarization you get a much sharper contrast to the screen, and it's a must-do if you're doing this backlight mod. And that chip that I just showed is the one that I tried to do this project with, and it is nearly impossible to solder wires to it, so don't ever try and use just the bivert chip. Get this hex board from Thursday Customs and your life will be a lot easier. So like with our other projects, the first step is to take apart the Game Boy and pull off the back panel here. Once you have that clear, you can remove the hex from its kit. The full kit comes with the hex DMG PCB, 4 pins, and a 1.5 inch wire, and some handy instructions here. Now that you have the kit out, you'll want to locate these 4 spots to solder the pins to the board. What you're going to do is heat up the pad and the solder and push the pins through the board. Now as you do this, take your time and just try and add a little pressure to the pin as you push down. What might happen is there might not be enough solder and you'll have a little bit of a loose fitting pin. Just add a little solder to it to get it to stand up straight, and you should be okay. Just take your time with it, like any soldering project. And the first 3 usually go pretty easy for me. The one that I find difficult is the 4th pin that you try and get into the same hole with the capacitor. There's not a lot of room in that hole, so what I found to be a little bit easier is to heat up the pad and the solder where the capacitor are, get the pin to stand up straight, and then just add a little bit of solder on top of it, and don't worry about getting the pin to go all the way through because it's a really tight space. And once you've done that and lined up all your pins, you can slide on the little hex board and then take a pair of clippers and just chop off the excess parts of the pins and solder straight to it. Now what we'll want to do is flip the board over and locate the 15th and 16th pins that connect to the ribbon. Now what we're going to be doing is desoldering these pins from the board, and by doing that we'll be disconnecting the traces, and I'll be using some tweezers to kind of lift the pins up off the board. It's hard to tell in the video, but I've got the 15th and 16th pins lifted off the board. Just take your time and be kind of gentle. You don't want to desolder any of the other pins, just these 2. And you'll also notice if you follow the traces on the board that these lead to the 2 of the pins that we soldered to the board. Next thing you want to do is take that piece of wire. If you have a pair of strippers, get that, strip them and tin the tip of the wire. And by tinning, I mean put a little solder on it so that it makes it easier to attach to the pin. And the first one I'll be attaching it to is the 15th pin. And the 15th pin connects to the 01 on the Thursday Customs hex board, and then the 16th pin connects to the 02 on the board. So just think 1501 and 1602. Pretty straightforward. I put a little bit of solder on the pad to get it started, and then I just heat it up again and get the wire attached to it. Then I do the same thing with the 02 pad, and I heat that up and attach the wire. And then I attach the 01 to 15 and 02 to 16. Make sure the wires are where they're supposed to be. And just to make sure that I have all my wiring together, I'm gonna test out the screen. Make sure that the wires aren't touching each other at all, like there's no soldering touching the 15 and 16, otherwise you won't get a clear picture. And if you look closely, you'll notice that the screen is inverted, which is good because that's what we were going for, but now what you have to do is flip the polarization screen on the front 90 degrees, and that will re-invert the screen. And once you've put it all back together, you should have a screen that looks like this, and a much sharper screen, a much more contrast, and And now you've got a cool working piece of nostalgia. You know, and I don't feel like it takes away from the original Game Boy. It only enhances it. And I had a lot of fun doing this mod, and I hope people out there do too.
It's actually amazing how that bivert chip, flipping that contrast, actually makes it a whole lot more readable. I didn't think it would.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing I like about this project is it's repurposing old hardware, and I tried to do it with that really tiny chip the first time. The second chip I found that has the board attached to it makes it life so much easier soldering this to it. And I mean, I have all three of the Game Boys here. This one doesn't have a backlight or anything. So this is just your standard Game Boy, which is like, okay, in regular light, that's fine. Then you have one with just the backlight, nice. Which is cool, yeah. And then you have the one with the chip. It's kind of hard to see on the camera.
Yeah, play with the contrast a little bit. There we go. It gives you so much more definition. It really does.
And you learn.
It's weird. It's like you figure they should have done this at the start.
Yeah, back in 1989. But really, I mean, the nice thing about it is I learned about how the chip works, how the LCD panel works, and you know, this whole project started because I wanted to put a Raspberry Pi inside of one, but then I got too nostalgic about it, and I didn't want to tear up an old Game Boy. So in the future, we're gonna 3D print a case and then put a Raspberry Pi in it.
It's like when you did the original MAME project here on Know How for putting a Raspberry Pi inside of a Nintendo case. I actually was gonna build on that, and so I got a Nintendo off of eBay, but it was working, and
you don't want to destroy it if it's
working.
I know. I mean, I think I bought all three of these for about $20 or less on eBay. And it was just it's kind of it was a fun project for me to start, and then now it's kind of leading into other facets of it.
Well, there you have it. If you've got a little bit of time and a little wherewithal, you could go ahead and repurpose your old Game Boy to be a new speed gaming monster. No, you can't do that, but you can make it
look way cooler.
Way cooler. And it becomes a good conversation piece.
Absolutely. People see these and they know instantly you've got geek cred at that point.
You know what else gives you instant geek cred?
I don't know, instant payments online?
Yeah, maybe doing that. Maybe doing payments in a way that's secure, that's fast, that's easy, and that basically takes you no time at all.
But can I do it with like Bitcoin and stuff like that?
Bitcoin, Venmo, Apple Pay, credit cards, pretty much anything that you might want to use to pay, I'd say your solution has to have that.
Even the new Android stuff?
Even the new Android stuff. You know, every popular form of payment really has to be included if you're going to have a real geek cred payment system on your website.
That sounds pretty, but is it easy to implement? Is it just a few lines of code?
You know, mine isn't. My solution is horrible because it required me to actually rewrite my site, redo my app, and I had to worry about that back end because, well, honestly, if it's financial information, I really don't want to have something I'm just testing.
Yeah, because you went through that, right? When you had your own business a long time ago?
I would not suggest that. That was a pain in the butt. You had to contract the credit card processors, and then you had to do a lot of testing because, again, you can't mess with people's financial information. You know what would be better? If you could just outsource that, if you could take the headaches away from you, all of that checking, all of the programming, all of the sandboxing that you have to do, and instead just integrate with 10 lines of code.
And thank our next sponsor.
Yeah, and thank our next sponsor, Braintree. That's exactly what Braintree does. They give you their SDK, their software development kit, that allows you to integrate with just 10 lines of code payments into your mobile app. Now, imagine this. Not only is it really easy to integrate, not only will they sit with you if you have trouble integrating and talk you through the integration, but they give you things like a sandbox so you can see whether or not it's going to look right. Does it react properly? These are the things that people need to know before they implement payments. These are the things that Braintree is famous for. Now, it's simple, it's secure, you can integrate it instantly, and the developers are going to love it because they know that you want the documentation. This is not something that you have to start researching on the internet. They actually give you the full book so you know what it's going to do, how it's going to work, and how they're going to integrate it. Their SDK comes in 7 languages: .NET, Node.js, Java, Perl, PHP, Python, Ruby, and their code supports Android, iOS, and JavaScript clients. Again, it's just 10 lines of in-app code. It really doesn't get easier than this. Braintree is used around the world by startups, by big businesses. Essentially, if you want to be with the big players, you got to think like the big players, and the big players think with Braintree. Braintree gives you an easy way to accept multiple payments with one integration. Quick, knowledgeable developer support if you have any questions, and it lets you accept Apple Pay, PayPal, Bitcoin, Venmo, cards, and whatever's next. With that SDK, one small snippet of code, and you're up and running in less than 10 minutes. Now, to learn more and to get your first $50,000 in transactions fee-free, go to braintreepayments.com/knowhow. That's braintreepayments.com/knowhow. And we thank Braintree for their support of Know-How. And Brian, you know what I want? I want to take a little trip back to Maker Faire.
We had a lot of fun at Maker Faire, didn't we?
We really did. Now, do you remember, I think it was the second thing that we recorded, we actually found a table just like in the middle of the fairgrounds, like not a booth.
Oh yeah.
Not some tent, but
it was like a fold-out table.
It was a fold-out table, and like their lunch was underneath.
Yeah,
and it was some local kids who put something together, and they thought it was cool, and they wanted to show it off. That's kind of the spirit of Maker.
Absolutely, and their idea was awesome.
It was an interesting idea. I've seen something like it before, but I like their enthusiasm. So let's go take a look. Hey, Alex, push that magic button.
That is really scary, Padre.
Father Robert Ballas, the digital Jesuit at Maker Faire 2015 for twitkh. Now, we have seen some interesting concoctions and gadgets here at the fair, but one of the ones that seems to tickle my heart the most is this. This is a VTOL craft. It allows you to take off as a quadcopter and transition to a traditional flight. I'm standing next to Dylan, who's going to explain how this works. How did you decide to create something like this?
So we're using an open source firmware here. It's called Open Aero VTOL. This frame is completely, well, the foam frame here we got off Hobby King, and then everything else was custom built. So we were very inspired by like the future of aerospace. We really thought this was going to be the future, and because it can do vertical takeoff and landing, once the rotors are tilted horizontally, we also think that it has the capability to be submersible. So that's really interesting for us.
Come a little closer. First of all, they're using 40 amp electronic speed controllers. That gives you a little taste of how much power they're driving to their motors. But if you look here, this flight controller is just a KK. It's a KK2. This is the same flight controller that we've been recommending for all our beginning builds. Now, I gotta ask, that's obviously not built into the KK. There is no VTOL flight selection. So how did you make the KK handle this?
It's an open source firmware. You just have to flash the KK with the open source code that's on the internet. So it has a gyroscope, auto leveling capabilities. So it's really very cool. So once it tilts, it actually has a capability to put some more thrust on the back rotor, so it won't fall. So I think that's really interesting.
Let's take a look at the actual operation. So this one is straightforward, right? You've got a forward operation, you've got a backward operation. When it's straight up, you're operating as a quadcopter. When it tilts forward, it's providing the forward thrust. But then how does the back work? Because obviously you don't want it pulling the back down.
Yep. So the motors in the back, they're spinning counterclockwise, right? So all these propellers are clockwise rotation. And then, so that one actually prepares these motors back here, actually propel the quadcopter up because the motors are rotating the other way.
If they want to find out more about your project, if they want to find out more about how you did this, where can they go on the internet to find out?
So we don't actually have any videos yet, but there are many awesome videos about VTOLs online. You can check out Happy Sundays, or there are many. Yeah, just search up anything on YouTube, basically.
Thank you very much for talking to us, and thank you for sharing this with us. I'm hoping that more and more makers will make stuff that just blows away the old genres. I'm Father Robert Ballas here at Maker Faire 2015.
It's actually a really cool project. I like that whole VTOL. Now, I mean, quadcopters are VTOL, but
right.
The difference is you're actually using up a lot of power when you're keeping a quadcopter in the air. If you could transition into flight, like traditional flight with an actual winged surface, you could stay in the air longer.
Right, and the thing I loved about that project that they had out there on the little foldable table was that it gave us ideas of what we want to do. And so you already have
I started mocking up some stuff. So let's say I love their project. I want to see it actually go. One of the things, though, is it's expensive. I was starting to tally up what they had
all the parts, because the motors, the battery.
Those were like $120 a pop for the motors. The battery was like a $200 battery. The body was a $250 body.
The KK was probably the cheapest thing.
The KK was like $20, but everything else was super sized, so it's super priced. You're talking about like $1,000 to $1,200 for that.
Yeah, and they want to try and make it waterproof and stuff. They definitely have some great ideas, but what do you got here, Padre?
I was wondering if we could build something that had the functionality of their VTOL craft, but would cost closer to, $200. Like what we've been doing with our quadcopter.
Definitely.
Builds. So what I have is, this is a Hobby King reactor. This is a Park Flyer. These are super cheap. I think I got this for like $17 on sale.
Apparently it's flown by the Stig.
It's flown by the, yes.
Little guy with a motorcycle helmet in there, yeah.
Some say he flies quadcopters. All we know is he's called the Stig. No, but what we wanted is to do this. Basically, get rid of the body, because we don't need the body. All we need is the airfoil, the part of the plane that's keeping the craft in the air.
Right.
Maybe some of the control surface later on. Now, on this table right here, these are just some standard aluminum reinforcement bars. I've actually built quadcopters out of this. This is a 3D printed tricopter mount. So this goes on the tail. What I was thinking about doing is I can easily print up a bunch of these, and it would allow me to pivot the props both forward and back.
Oh, so is that what this little piece right here is?
Right, so this right here, that's where the mount goes. So the motor's going to mount on top of that.
Yeah, let me take a look at that.
Yeah. So the cool thing is, and I may actually need to get a larger wing or smaller supports, but this would allow us to build a plane that uses differential thrust. So there's not traditional control surfaces, but like, for example, if you wanted to turn it to the right, you would increase the motor speed on the left. If you wanted to turn left, you would increase the motor speed on the right. It's very commonly used.
Okay.
The tricky part, and this is something that I do want to go through the custom firmware for, I want to see what happens during that transition. Because during the transition, you're switching controls.
Right.
Because in a quadcopter, on the right stick, you push forward and it goes forward, back goes back, left and right. And on the left stick, it's throttle and then yaw.
Your amount of thrust, yeah.
When you switch to aircraft, when you push forward, it makes it dive. So I don't want to be going forward, start transitioning, and then it just nosedives into the ground. We'll see.
Yeah, that seems a little tricky.
Yeah, but this is part of the fun. We are going to start getting into experimental craft and know-how. We've been doing some basic builds. So we did the super simple 250, the Hobby King 250. We did a super simple 450 class.
Yep, I love that one.
Now we're doing a bit more advanced, more powerful 250. I think the next build, we're actually going to start just like building out of wood and just make strange frames that do strange things.
See what we can make fly.
Yeah, and also it gives me a chance to play with our 3D printer.
Yeah, this piece looks really good, and it seems like you have the density set a little bit higher, because this feels solid.
It is very solid. Yeah, that thing actually uses up about 17 meters of filament, believe it or not. Yeah, so that's...
So is there going to be any left for the rest of us, or are you almost out now?
No, I've got about 70 meters left.
Oh, okay, no problem.
Yeah, I know you need to print out some stuff.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Now, folks, we are going to be going on to your questions, but before we do that, let's go ahead and thank the second sponsor of this episode of Know-How. You know them, you love them. We use them here extensively. In fact,
like every day.
Every day. Every kit that we do, every project that we have, you're going to find us using the iFixit kit.
I bet you I can take apart this GameBoy before the end of the ad.
Absolutely. Now,
challenge.
I forgot to tell Alex to get our iFixit B-roll, but I'm sure he's going to be able to find it someplace. This iFixit kit has been the cornerstone of everything that we've done. Every project that we've done, every modification, every upgrade, we use it. And that's because it's got bits for everything. When you're talking about iFixit, it's not just the kit. We know that. It's also a place to get repair guides. So if you need to fix your Xbox, if you need to fix your bike, if you need to fix your glasses, you can find a way to get those instructions off of iFixit. It's your companion in your DIY world. They have more than 10,000 repair guides for everything from electronics like your smartphone to your appliances, your clothing, yeah, even your bike. We've been using it to fix these Game Boys. Brian's been using it to fix the Xbox Red Ring of Death. And I've been using iFixit because sometimes I need the repair guides to tell me how to properly take apart electronics. You've all seen electronics that have been pried apart with flat screwdrivers. Don't do that. That's just stupid.
That's the worst when you try to take something apart and all the screws are stripped.
Yeah, exactly. Now with this is their 70-tool toolkit, their ProTech toolkit. It helps you with any mod malfunction or misfortune. It's the gold standard for electronics work, from garage hackers to the CIA and the FBI. More importantly, their unique tools are used by us, by repair technicians everywhere. This 54-bit driver kit, this is what I really like because it includes all those hard-to-find bits.
Well, I'm using the tri-wing bit right now.
Exactly, the tri-wing bit. They've got the security bits, the pentalobe bits. You know, if you've ever tried to jam a bit into a screw because you don't have quite the right one, it may work the first or second time, but then you stripped it out and, yeah, say goodbye to your little project. They also include things like the swivel top precision driver, the flex extension so you can get around corners, an ESD safe precision static tweezers so that you can properly pull components without destroying them with static, including that anti-static wrist wrap that we like so much because, well, you know, we like to keep grounded. They have also got nylon spudgers, metal spudgers, compact, durable tool rolls that let you do your work in peace without having to worry about whether or not you've got the right tool for the job. Now, this is only $64.95 and it's backed by a lifetime warranty. Hobbyists and home DIY fixers alike have used this toolkit for doorknobs, for eyeglasses, cabinet doors, sink fixtures, and so much more. If you're looking for a great addition to an artist or hobbyist tool chest, folks, look no further. This is what you want. Best of all, along with this kit comes the thousands of free iFixit guides to help you put your tools in use. You can fix it, and iFixit can help you. Visit ifixit.com/twit for more than 10,000 free step-by-step guides. iFixit also sells every part and tool that you'll need. Enter the code KNOWHOW at checkout, and you'll save $10 off any purchase of $50 or more. That's ifixit.com/twit. ifixit.com/twit, and use the code KNOWHOW at checkout to save $10. And we thank iFixit for their support of Know How. You just ripped that thing apart. Wow.
Well, I was very delicate, yes, but I was able to take this whole Game Boy apart, and that's the little mod chip that was in the...
Oh, that's the one you put in there?
Yeah, look at that little bitty guy.
That's kind of cute.
I know, but between the iFixit toolkit and their magnetic mat and this Maker mat giant mouse pad thing, like those are my essential tools when I'm taking stuff apart.
You know, it's the funny part is that magnetic mat has become like a permanent fixture on my desk.
Because you can write on it which screws go, and then you just throw them on there and you can lift it up and they don't fall off the table.
What I actually want to do is I need to get like a stack of those because I do multiple projects. And I want to be able to like just seal it and put it aside and say, okay,
yeah,
this is all those screws. Because otherwise you end up with that box of screws and you're like, I hope this is the right one.
I always call it, that's a weight reduction mod. If you have leftover screws, it's just less weight on the quadcopter.
It's holding together, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, no, the one that kills me is if you put in screws that are too short, so it's making contact, but like not the right amount, or too long, and now they're drilling into parts of the board that they shouldn't.
We've had that problem with our former DJI.
Yes, that's exactly what happened. Now, let's go ahead and move away from that DJI and instead talk about why things won't melt, Brian.
I'm going to guess that's a question from our Google Plus group with some authority, too. This comes from T. Rayburn. I've been holding the tip of my iron to this bullet for 10 minutes, and it still won't melt the solder inside the cup. Temperature is turned all the way up on the iron. It's a Velleman VT SS5 from iFixit. Any tips?
Okay, first T. Rayburn, take the iron away from the cup if you still have it on there.
Yeah,
that's a fire hazard.
Well, it's probably burned down everything now.
Yeah. This is something that we've actually covered a couple of times on the show, but it's important. It's basic soldering, and it's something that I think you might need to take a look at. Now, the funny thing is, I actually did a segment for the new screensavers specifically on this problem: how to solder connectors and how to get past that annoying "it won't melt" issue.
Yeah, it can be a really big pain in the butt.
Exactly.
I've had that experience when I was trying to solder all these little guys on here.
Yeah, sometimes it just takes a little dab of solder, but don't take my word for it. Instead, let's go ahead and listen to me. If you're an aspiring maker, then at some point you're going to have to solder. And one of the most difficult things to solder are connectors, because this is where things will go wrong. you'll get cold solder joints, you'll get non-adhesion, you'll get voids, basically all the worst things about making. But I'm going to show you an easy way to solder both metal and plastic connectors. Any connection will start by stripping 4 to 10 millimeters of insulation from the end of your wire. Tin the lead by heating the wire until solder flows into the strands. The easiest way to attach metal connectors like these 3.5 millimeter bullets is by heating the bullets until you can flow solder inside the mounting cup. Quick tip, if you can't get heat to the surface, flow a little solder onto the end of your iron to act as a heat bridge. Fill the cup halfway with solder, then insert your pre-tin lead. Allow the solder on the leads to reflow, then remove heat and hold the wire in position until the solder cools. Always double check your work, looking for empty mounting cups or obvious gaps between wires and solder. Once you're satisfied with your work, use heat shrink tubing to insulate the connectors, then repeat for the opposite end. Soldering plastic connectors like the XT60 is trickier than pure metal because too much heat will destroy the housing. I found that the easiest way to solder XT60 is to first plug the connector into its opposite to spread the heat and maintain alignment of the conductors. Now you need to be quick with your soldering. Insert your pre-stripped and tin lead into the cup, then apply heat to the wire, not the connector. When the solder in the pre-tin wire starts to flow, quickly apply solder to the wire and fill the cup. Never spend more than 8 seconds applying heat, and make sure to let the XT60 cool before soldering the other wire. Once your wires are attached, use heat shrink tubing to insulate the conductors. Above all else, practice. Practice, practice, practice. You don't need a lot of expensive equipment. In fact, I chose one of the cheapest irons I've got in my inventory, and I've got a 30-year-old pair of helping hands. It's not about the gear, it's about doing it over and over again. Take your time with practice, and soon enough, you'll be a maker. You can also do that with just flux. In the chat room, they're talking about the flux strip, and it's the same thing. You just need to create a heat bridge because metal on metal doesn't always transfer heat efficiently.
Right.
If you put something there that convects the heat really, really well, like flux or like solder, well, it just goes.
Yeah, no, that I found that very helpful for my own soldering stuff, but also props on shooting that because you really get into like the fine detail and you can see what's happening.
You can see my really dirty iron.
Yeah, right? So if Padre can do it with that filthy iron.
I'm not good at soldering. I'm really not.
So hopefully that helps.
Let's move on. We got something else here.
All right, this one comes from Arcturus Lancaster. Lancaster.
No, you have to say Arcturus.
Arcturus Lancaster. I wanted to say Lannister.
Lannister. Oh, you know what? Arcturus, your name is now Lannister.
You are now a Lannister. Something weird is happening on my network that causes video playback to pause and then resume at the next keyframe. My video files live on the FreeNAS server and the playback is done with Windows 7 Media Player Classic. My computers are wired on Gig E connection. The media computer has a spike in the traffic that just pauses, just as it pauses. It happens every 5 minutes or so. It seems to only happen with older low bitrate files. New content, 720p and above, it does not seem to have this issue. Could it be buffering or something that's timing out?
Now, Arcturus actually figured this out. But,
oh, he did?
Yeah, he did. But
good, so we're done.
We're done.
Yeah.
No, but this is actually something that's really good for people to know because people will run into this if you're using FreeNAS or any NAS that you can't quite tweak the sleep.
And that would be very frustrating.
That's super frustrating because you think, is it my computer? Is it my network? Is there something wrong with the NAS?
How do I diagnose this?
Answer is none of those. So what you're running into is this is power saving. And this is especially possible on those like Western Digital green and blue drives, which are designed to spin
run
down.
cool and
because they want to save power.
Right.
The problem is most of that is built into the drive, and a lot of NASs and a lot of software doesn't have a good way to shut that off.
So that's on the firmware?
It's on the firmware. And what will happen is if they're no longer pushing out data for a given amount of time, they'll spin the drive down to save power.
Okay.
Which is bad because it means you're just going to have to spin it back up, which adds wear and tear. And it also means you're going to get these network hiccups because what's going to happen is the buffer empties and now it has to wait while the drive spins up.
Right.
That's exactly what it was saying. And that hiccup in network traffic, that's all the error traffic. It's saying, hey, wait, how come you haven't sent me the next packet? Wake up, go, go.
It's a packet storm.
Package storm.
So how do we fix that then?
Well, he actually had his own fix. The fix is you use high definition files. It was only happening when he had low def files because the bit rate was low enough to actually let the buffer empty out. If he was using HD, he was always pulling data off the drive. It would never stop.
Okay.
Get it?
Okay. So it never took a break.
It never took a break, and it stayed alive. Now, I think, if I remember properly, the latest version of FreeNAS does have a feature that lets you turn off sleep in those kinds of drives.
Yeah.
My thing is I don't use those drives. I use like the red drives, because the red drives are designed to live in NAS, not in desktops.
Okay, and those don't save. They don't have the power saving mode where they spin down.
Well, they do, but it's not active like the green. In the green drive, it gets really annoying. Like it will do it all the time. I have a green drive in my computer that I use as sort of my archive drive. I dump stuff off when I'm kind of done with it before.
But you're not watching videos off of that.
No, and I wouldn't, because it would not. No.
It would make you angry.
It would make me angry, and you wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
Right. I mean, that's probably why they call them green drives, right? Hulk.
All right.
Smash.
How about this next one is actually for you and Alex. You have more experience with this than I do.
Yeah, servicing a liquid-cooled PC. This comes from Brendan Hauser. He recently bought a used Alienware Aurora R3 gaming PC that has liquid-cooled i5 processor. Does he need to perform any maintenance on the water cooling system?
No.
Nope. Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, well, all right.
Depends on the system, but yes.
There's old school water cooling, and then there's new school water cooling.
And the new school water cooling,
awesome.
you do not have to service, because
really
it's a self-contained system.
It's a self-contained, it's a sealed system. In fact, most of those, if you do open them up, it will mess them up.
Right, yeah, you don't want to touch that.
Yeah.
And you'll know if it's that system, because we've seen the ones from Intel.
Right, or like the one from Main Gear, that's designed to be sealed. You should never have to open. And in fact, if you have to open it up, you should really replace the system, because I mean, you did it. Both you and our director, Alex, you did water cooling back in the day, right?
Yeah, it was mostly Alex. I just was there to observe and try and help. But it basically just destroyed itself. Everything started leaking.
Could you tell us what it was like to work with water cooling back in the day?
It's not worth it. It wasn't worth it.
Right. I mean, and the whole idea that it wasn't even for overclocking for Alex, right? It was because you just wanted a quiet PC.
I wanted the silent thing, but it still had the fans on the radiator that were not that quiet anyway. So, and also had the pump noise, which was loud too.
Right. And like JJ to the 4884 is asking, are there systems that allow you to change out the fluid? Yes, there are.
Yeah.
Most of those are homebrew systems, and they've gotten a lot better. But the sealed systems they're really your friend, and especially since you can buy a sealed system for not much more than you can get one of those homebrew kind of janky systems. It's not worth it to risk your system anymore.
Yeah, I mean, unless you want it to be a piece of art. I've seen people who have mounted their computer on their wall, and they use the liquid cooling. It goes to the CPU, it goes to the graphics card. It looks cool, but whenever you have to change out it's glycol, right?
I got algae in mine once. Ooh. That was horrible. I'm like, what is going on? It just destroyed everything.
So does the Alien Aurora R3, does that have, that's probably not a self-contained system, right?
It is, well, it's Alien, so that's a Dell gaming PC.
Okay.
And yeah, so it's a self-contained, it's a sealed system.
Oh, then he should be good then.
Yeah, you don't have to perform any maintenance. In fact, if you need to perform maintenance on the water cooling system from your Dell machine, you should probably contact Dell, especially if it's an Alienware. It's a higher end machine. It's probably got a longer warranty.
Yeah.
You don't want to mess with it, because if you do the wrong thing with your water cooling system, it will destroy your PC.
And that's not fun. No, I remember poor Alex, right? It started leaking onto your hard drive.
It didn't destroy the PC, but all the part that I was Coolants was the company that made the thing. So I bought a case that had a built-in radiator pump thing at the top, and then I just bought all Coolants parts for the CPU and the graphics cards and hard drives.
Yeah.
And at some point, it was the hard drive ones, which was like this piece that went on top of the hard drive with in and out 2 ports on the front of it, and those ports like kind of just started leaking over time, just a little bit, just kind of like build up the crystally stuff around it, and sometimes would drip like very slowly on occasion, enough that it would start to like around the hard drive kind of build up some crusty stuff that you'd have to clean off from time to time.
Yeah, Creamy Corn Cob in the chat room is saying, yeah, idiots use tap water, not purified. Yeah, that's actually a problem. In fact, you really shouldn't be using water. You should
distilled.
be using,
I mean, if you're going to use water, but you shouldn't do that either. But isn't the mixture like glycol?
It's a little bit of glycol.
It was a glycol-based something.
Yeah.
But you know, the worst thing about all that is that came from a time where PCs tended to run really, really hot and needed a lot of coolers.
Well, I was thinking it was the Pentium D. Wasn't that the processor you had?
No, it was the Pentium Extreme, which was technically a Pentium D, not branded Pentium D, but it was a Pentium D with hyperthreading.
Yeah. Right. So this is like right before the Core 2 Duo came out.
It's like a year or something.
Patrick Delahanty says he used gravy.
Yeah. See, if I did that, it would just make me hungry.
I want to eat my PC now. No, but like modern PCs, like for example, take a look at both that main gear PC that I've got testing right now and the Acer Predator that we liked so much. They're quiet.
They're quiet. They're
really,
powerful.
really quiet. And that main gear has a liquid cooler for just the CPU.
Yeah.
But it doesn't need it for anything else. It's no longer really necessary. Yeah. Like you said, if you wanted to look artistic, if you wanted to look cool, yeah, go ahead, do it. But
it's not really a great idea.
No.
So do yourself a favor. Don't do liquid cooling unless you explicitly want to make it really pretty.
Exactly. Or if you're doing like what we do with our submerged computer with mineral oil.
Or that. All this talk just makes me want to build a PC though now. Right? Again.
Or if you just want to just always have to like open your computer up to put more stuff in it and always like take things apart and just non-stop work on it.
That was my favorite.
That's great.
Tinker.
Yeah, with the water cooled, and now you've got all these pipes in the way. You're like, no,
yeah, because if you wanted, I think even when you wanted to take out a hard drive, right? You had to slide all the panels.
I wanted to take the hard drive off because had the hard drive cooler attached to the hard drive on top of it. You'd have to pull like the tubes out kind of with it and then like pull the hard drive out of the slot and then detach that piece. And now that piece is kind of dangling there while you have the hard drive out. Same thing with the graphics cards and the CPU.
And then you got air bubbles trapped in there for a while, didn't you?
That is true. Well, because I think it was because when it was leaking out, it built up some air pockets inside of the system because the level would kind of drain or something. And then like on one of the bottom of the tube where like it kind of bent up, there's like a little air bubble on the bottom, just in the way that the liquid is flowing, and it just which means that it didn't have much circulation.
You couldn't bleed the system and stuff.
Bad.
Yeah, it was bad.
Bad.
All right.
And any time that you needed to disconnect any of the tubes to do anything, you had to turn the computer upside down, kind of hanging off the edge or something, unscrew the little screw the reservoir with a jar underneath, and just like wait for it to drain. But it's not done yet because now you got to like tilt the computer and kind of shake it around just to try to get everything out of it. That's great fun.
That's what I really want for my PC, to have to treat it like it's going to a Jiffy Lube.
Yeah, just roll it in, over like a little cart.
Now, this is normally the part where we do a parting shot, but I actually wanted to do something a little bit more interesting. We have a post from 610 Bob, who is very active in our Google Plus group. He writes, I just finished adding individually addressable LEDs to my quad. Not only can I have cool lighting effects, but I can choose the effects using a 3-way switch on my remote. It works by... You know what? I don't want to read this anymore.
That's a lot.
I really don't want to read this. Instead, hey, Alex, instead of us reading this, why don't we just go ahead and show them?
Hey, know-how community. I just added some LEDs to my quad, and I want to show you guys. They're controllable via my remote control. See? There's something else. What was it? Oh yeah, they're individually adjustable. And I can change the mode with my remote. The light strip is made up of LEDs that contain a WS2811 IC. This IC controls the red, green, and blue in each LED. Data is shifted in from the first LED to the second LED to the third LED, all the way until the end of the LED light strip. I split the LEDs into groups. Each side of the arm got its own group. I did this so that the LEDs are a little bit easier to manage, and so that I can replace just a section for the inevitable crash that will wipe out a section of LEDs. To connect the groups together, I used a JST 3-pin connector. To power the LEDs, I used the guts of a 6-amp USB car charger. This should be able to handle a 3S and 4S LiPo battery. At the heart of the LED light system is an Arduino Mini. Besides just controlling the LEDs, it monitors a signal from the receiver to figure out whether the switch on my remote is in the up position, middle position, or down position. And that's it. Please remember that the code is on GitHub, so if you want to do this yourself, go right ahead, download it. Also, I should mention that the code isn't 100%. I just threw it together over a couple days. So if you're good at Arduino coding, please improve it. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye! This is for when I want to scare people. Aliens are coming!
Thank you, 610 Bob.
That was awesome.
That was awesome. That was a lot of fun. I will say, I kind of dubstepped it up a little bit.
A little womp womp.
I may have taken his video and but it was a great job. Send us more like that. We love to see your projects.
That was excellent. That's one of the things I've been wanting to do with my quad since we first started. You put LEDs on the I think the first quad you gave me. I wrecked it, and then I just haven't gone back. But I want to do landing patterns and like you said at the end of the video, scare people. Like
but just be careful because like I did one where it did a chase around the quad.
Yeah.
But especially at night, it's so hard to figure out what the orientation is.
Oh, jeez,
Like I got up in the air, I'm like, oh no. The lights are always changing. What did I do?
I have no idea where I'm going. Yeah, because I think the one you gave me, it just had green lights in the front and like red lights facing in the back.
No, red lights in the back, green lights in the front. So it was, as long as you saw the green lights, the controls were true. You saw the red lights, flip it around.
Right. Yeah, that's how it was. But his is way more intricate, and you can do like the different patterns and stuff. So
we're gonna start them by showing them how to do the inexpensive mod, which is basically just buying some LED light strips, taping them to your quad, and wiring them into the power harness.
Right.
His is more complicated because it's actually using an Arduino to take input from the receiver, and then it pushes out to the drivers for the LEDs.
Right. And well, he did have that good point where you don't put the LEDs on the edge of the props or like at the arm, because that's the first thing that's going to make contact and just destroy your string of LEDs.
Your work. Yeah. Oh, folks, I'm afraid that's the end of this episode of Know How. It was a lot of material.
A lot of stuff.
We know that. So what we want to do is we want to give you an easy way to access our notes. Do you want to figure out how he did the GameBoy mod? Do you want to figure out what we're going to be doing with the VTOL mod? Do you want to figure out what we do when, we play with, I don't know, glycol?
Glycol, yeah.
You can do that by going to our show notes.
Never doing water cooling again.
No.
The show notes, so they live with all our other episodes at twit.tv/KH, and there's handy little links for subscribing to any version of the video that you would prefer, or audio. I'm not sure how you would follow along too well on the audio, but I'm sure there's people out there.
Your voice is just mesmerizing.
That's so I've heard.
Yes. Also, don't forget that we've got a Google Plus group. Just go to Google Plus, look for Know How. It's 8,700 members strong, and it's active. It's very active. Please join us because it's a great way to find out what other members of the community are doing. And if you post your projects, we'll put them on Know How like 610 Bob. We can't put them all, but we'll go through them, and I promise we'll make an honest effort to get your questions, your projects, your pictures,
your crash videos,
especially your crash videos, into the show.
So, and there's one other place you can find us
Twitter.
there's a Twitter for upcoming show stuff, what we're doing behind the scenes.
Lots of pictures.
What's that?
Lots of pictures.
Lots of pictures.
Crashes.
Yeah, that marble thing that you posted on your Twitter.
I like that. I'm still squinting over that.
Anyway, I'm at cranky_hippo.
And I'm at Padre SJ. Oh, and by the way,
our director,
Al
Grumple.
Yes, Grumple, right?
Excuse me,
yes.
Brian, that's Gumple.
Oh, I'm hearing that it's Gumple. Okay.
I'm sorry. The control room is telling me to do this with my hand.
Right. This helps us hear him better.
I never said any such thing.
Oh, they can hear this, right?
He's saying to keep our hands up to our ears so that we can hear him. Yep.
Well, don't forget to follow Alex Grumple at ANELF3. That's a NELF3 on twitter.com.
So I think we've shown these before some episodes back, but I found the pictures of draining my computer if we should show those.
Do that. That's a quick Jiffy Lube.
So here's a quick thing. So that's the top of the reservoir that had already kind of like leaked and drained, so it had condensation inside of it kind of building up.
Ew.
So it needed to be drained. So there we go, turning it upside down.
It is pretty.
It was a mess though.
Yeah.
And then we're just kind of getting ready to drain it there, and then there we go.
The hair!
There we go. So there's the draining upside down, just kind of like letting it just take a long time.
It was an all-night thing. Like,
yeah, it was pretty much an all-night thing.
It was a sleepover kind of thing. Like, we would start working on his PC, have some pizza around like 2 or 3 in the morning. We'd finish and then play games.
Oh, and we taped it on tape.
Actual tape.
And there it is drained.
Yeah.
So, folks, there you have it from our director, Alex Grumple.
Al Grumple.
From Al Grumple, our director Al Grumple. Just stay away from liquid cooling. You don't need it. Until next time, I'm Father Robert Ballas.
I'm Brian Burnett.
And now that you know how,
go do it. Go liquid cool it. Except don't, because that sucks.